My name is William Doherty. I'm a sergeant with the Floral Park Police Department. This is Timm, a police officer with the Floral Park Police Department. If there are attorneys in the room, I've been told since I'm an attorney, this will qualify for continuing legal education credits, which is good. We'll talk a little bit about the Good Samaritan law and how it plays into this at the end. That'll be the last part. We'll also give you some time to play with the tourniquets and see how they work, and some of our quick clot gauze, which I have to say it that way because it's a tongue twister. Quick clot gauze, which is a hemostatic agent that's used for real bad traumatic bleeding. I've been a police officer for 20 years. Not sure how much longer I will be though. I might have to go retire and be a lawyer. I was also an advanced EMT for about 17 years in the volunteer fire service, and when I learned how to be an EMT, an advanced EMT, and Officer Timm was a senior airman in the Air Force, which is basically the equivalent of a sergeant. When we were taught first aid, we were really taught that tourniquets were tourniquets were bad. They caused everything south of the tourniquet on the body to die. Don't use them unless there's an amputation. They're forgotten. And that thinking has changed really since Sandy Hook, the event in Connecticut, I think in 2013, probably right around this time of year, 2013, mid-12. And this Hartford Consensus Group, which is a consortium of physicians and trauma surgeons and all sorts of other people, and the Committee on Trauma, Bleeding Control is affiliated with the American College of Surgeons. They all got together and they said, you know what, there's got to be a way to prevent such massive loss of life. It didn't need to happen. And because I'm a nerd, I actually read this paper, which is about 83 pages long, and the reality is it didn't need to happen. It could have saved some lives had they had tourniquets around. Just like 40 or 50 years ago, nobody used defibrillators except for physicians and nurses. Now they're in every building because they work, and you can train a civilian, non-medical person to use them and save lives. The same thing for CPR. 50 or 60 years ago, nobody did CPR unless you were in a hospital. They called it cardiothoracic resuscitation or something, slightly different wording. Nobody did it unless you were a physician. Now we know that getting that into the hands of non-medical civilian type people does in fact save lives. So with that, we'll get moving. Both of us, just so you know, our credentials for this, we're both certified by the American College of Surgeons to teach this. This is their curriculum. We added the graphics for the police department and the district attorney's office since they're sponsoring it, but this curriculum is completely taken with their permission, and we're kind of their ambassadors to get this program out into the public. If you don't have a handout, Officer Timm can get it to you. We have a couple of short handouts. So you're going to learn today why we need to learn to stop the bleed and how to do it. This is considered first aid legally. So this is not practicing medicine without a license. This is the same as doing CPR or using an AED or even shooting Narcan to somebody's nose. Legally speaking, it's first aid. You're covered by the Good Samaritan law. However, when I asked, like specifically, is there a codified defense in the law for people who use this? The answer I got from the expert was probably maybe. Right? Nobody's been sued yet, but we think you'll be covered for it. Because as long as you're acting within the scope of your training and you're acting in good faith, that's what the Good Samaritan law says. They want to incentivize the public to help in bad situations. Their buzzword, their buzz phrases, the only thing worse than a death is a death that could have been prevented. They really want you to get out there with these tourniquets. These are the people that wrote up the curriculum, all very renowned in the field. It doesn't really get much better than this when it comes to saving lives. The National Association of EMTs is actually, when you get certified as an EMT or a first responder or a paramedic, you're certified by your state. You can also get a national certification that allows you to practice in all 50 states. The test is harder, but if they approve of this, it's a good program. This is just thrown in there. There's one picture. I don't even think it's real. I think it's a graphic, and you see a little bit of spurting blood. We taught this to about 260 teachers at one of our high schools during a professional development event last month, and one guy had to leave because it's not a bad picture, I promise. But if you need to leave.
We will try not to linger on the slide too long. Fair enough?
You've probably seen these boxes on your set. They are bleeding control kits. and they're part of a new White House initiative. Soon, you'll be seeing them on the walls of public spaces.
Airports, shopping malls, even your place of business. Open the box and you will find what you need to stave off a bleeding wound.
And give the victim time for help to arrive.
These are items that you should also have in your home and car.
The kit comes with gauze, scissors, and a tourniquet.
As well as gloves to protect you and the patient.
Often holding pressure firmly against a wound or wrapping it tightly will stop the bleeding.
But in more severe cases, a tourniquet may be required.
It should be slipped on the limb and fastened above the bleeding wound. Then use a plastic rod to tighten it until the bleeding stops. Once applied, the patient should be taken to the hospital and the tourniquet removed by medical personnel only.
Make sure you call 911 first. For more information and instructional videos, please visit these websites.
You can save a life by learning how to stop the bleeding.
CVS cares.
So this program is really just an hour or less long lesson on first aid. Nobody's expecting you to perform surgery. Nobody's expecting you to cauterize injuries. Nobody's expecting you to perform a head-to-toe assessment. The point of this program is, holy cow, there's somebody who's bleeding so much that it won't stop. There's somebody who's bleeding so much that it's pouring out of his or her clothing or spurting against the wall. I think I know how to fix that because I have a tourniquet now. That's what this is. Or the quick clot gauze. Again, for those of you who came late, I have to say it that way because if I say it fast, I can't say it. So the focus of this program is on the immediate response to bleeding. What do you do when you recognize this terrible event and how can you help? Recognize that, you know what, this looks like one of those life-threatening emergencies that they explained to me, and ways that you can stop the bleeding. Today we're going to talk about hemostatic agents or hemostatic gauze, quick clot gauze, and tourniquets. Quick clot gauze is gauze that's impregnated with a chemical that reacts with the hemoglobin in the blood, and it makes the hemoglobin bind and stop bleeding. We'll practice a little bit with fake blood on this fake leg, and we have gloves for you. The amazing thing about this quick clot gauze, can you throw me that? It's not blood, it's Kool-Aid. If you see that blue line, this is a training quick clot. But in the real stuff, that blue line is called radio-opaque, which means it will show up on an X-ray. We'll see by the time this is over that you might have to put all of this, we'll throw this one out, I think.
Yeah.
You might have to put all of this and maybe 2 more into a bad wound before you tourniquet it to stop the bleeding. Naturally, we don't want foreign bodies to get stuck in a wound. Rather than having to root around it in the emergency room, they can take an X-ray and wherever they see the blue line, they go, that blue line shows up on an X-ray. That's the point of that. One last quick video.
It was a little strange to sit down to someone that you've never met before and decide that you're going to grab their hand and tell them everything is okay.
That's great. That's all I remember doing at that moment. I knew I was going to wreck.
I remember feeling like we have to do something immediately right now.
The day started out like any other day. Wasn't cold, wasn't hot. My friend called me that morning and said, well, I'm going to take out my Harley and you got your new bike. And so let's just go out and have some fun.
All of a sudden, I see the woman on the motorcycle just flying through the air. I just remember saying, stop the car.
I remember getting thrown head first over the motorcycle. And I heard them say, don't move, please don't move. Blood was streaming down and it went on to the gutter. There's still the mark of the blood.
And then we pulled up and saw her blood was rushing down out of her leg into the gutter. My husband's cousin took his shirt off and immediately started applying pressure to stop the bleeding.
Camille was holding my hand. I remember that distinctly. She was saying, you're going to be okay. And to hear those words was so important.
I really feel bystanders have a responsibility to act. Don't be afraid. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to hurt the patient. All you'll do is help, even if it's just a comforting hand.
Doing something is better than doing nothing. That helps us more than they would ever realize. That can make all the difference between
you imagine yourself in a situation where you've been in an accident, you're vulnerable, you're frightened, think about what you would want.
So really, you are the help until the help arrives. And it's not just a criminal incident. It's not just for an active shooter or an active killer. It's not just for a bad person that hurts a group of people. This can happen at work. It can happen at home. Trimming your hedges, you cut a finger off, you avulse your arm. It can happen anywhere. It's not just for bombings or crashes. Really, it can happen in all sorts of different places. Where was it? Las Vegas, they used like 23 of them for that shooting.
In Las Vegas, they used 20, they applied 24 tourniquets in the big concert shooting that they had in Las Vegas. They applied 24 tourniquets. 23 people were saved simply for the tourniquets were applied. In that crowd was a bunch of first responders, you know, Army guys that were back from the war, or Marines. They all learned how to use these things, and that's why they were applied.
In our police department, we all have something like this. Some of us carry it in a different way on our gun belt. I have one on my gun belt and like 3 in my bag. But we all have access to tourniquets in our cars. And 2 or 3 different types of different tourniquets also. But you'll also see those boxes like you saw in the video. A lot of places are now putting them on the wall next to the AED. A lot of schools are buying them. We've trained over 300 people in our school district, faculty, staff, administrators. So they're starting to buy them. They're really for lots of things. Even in gym class, you can lose 25% of your blood volume from a long bone fracture if it's open. So it's not just for criminal events. The first thing you need to do if you ever have occasion is to save somebody's life is obviously to ensure your own safety. Because you can't help if you can't get there. You can't help if you get hurt. Like we drive slowly, as slowly as we can to get to an emergency because we can't help if we crash on the way there. But that applies to you guys also. So along those lines, try to use universal precautions. If it's somebody you don't know, but you want to help, see if there are gloves available to you. Because you really don't want to mix your body with their blood. Then we talk about the ABCs of bleeding, which are different than the ABCs that used to be if you've ever learned CPR, which by the way is now changed to CAB anyway. But so alert, if you're in a situation where somebody's dreadfully hurt, and you think you might need to use one of these tools, have somebody call 911, or you call 911. That's the first thing you need to do, because get them on the road there, and then you can do what you've been trained to do. Find the bleeding injury, and we're going to explain more of this as we go on. This is just kind of like an appetizer. If you're going to use a tourniquet or a hemostatic gauze, the bleeding is probably going to be very apparent. You're really not going to have to look around for it. If it's that bad, you're going to see it. It's going to be telling you, here I am. And the first thing you should do is compress the wound, apply direct pressure. When we were taught first aid in EMT school and paramedic school, first you apply pressure, then you raise it over your heart, then last resort is tourniquet. But the first thing you need to do is apply pressure. If you're going to use a tourniquet, if you're at tourniquet stage, the pressure's probably not going to work. But while you're trying to get your stuff together or telling somebody to run to the wall unit to get the tourniquet or whatever, apply pressure. Cover the wound with something clean, a clean cloth if you can. But that being said, it doesn't have to be sterile. If all you have is somebody's scarf, it doesn't have to be sterile. Use that. I wouldn't suggest using a rag in a mechanic's shop. It's full of petroleum, but it doesn't have to be sterile. Use your common sense. That should carry the day. You may have to use the tourniquet. Before this is over, we'll be familiar with tourniquets, and we'll actually tell you where you can buy them. And pack the wound, if necessary, with the quick cloth gauze or anything else you have handy. If you only have regular gauze, like in your house, do it. Common sense. You may not have quick cloth, although you can buy that on Amazon. Before you offer any help, you need to be safe. That makes sense. If you become injured, you can't hurt them. Initiate the care only if it's safe for you to do so. So some of the recommendations that we talk about when we brainstorm on these things is, if there's a terrible active killer event in a school, when the police get there, we're going to invade the building and engage the bad guy. We're not going to stop to help people until the bad guy is done and over with. If we know that usually within the first 2 minutes of our arrival, they take care of themselves statistically. but that's not always the case. So we're gonna look for the bad guy and try to engage him. We're gonna be stepping over the wounded. So if you're a school teacher or you work in an office building or whatever the venue may be, and you have access and training with tourniquets, drag the person to someplace safe or batten the hatches if you are someplace safe and render aid. We're gonna double back when it's over and try to help, but we're gonna step over people until we get rid of the threat. You can't help yourself if you're out in the hallway. Go someplace safe. And try to protect yourself from bloodborne infections. That really doesn't matter so much if it's somebody you love, unless it does, you probably would know if they have something you wouldn't want to touch. But that's really for strangers. If it's somebody you love, use gloves if you have them, but don't let it prevent you from rendering aid. Call 911 yourself or get somebody else to do it. I can't stress how important it is to not try to render aid before you call us. Get us on the road. Where I work, or where we work, we get there before the ambulance because they're volunteers and we're always out on patrol. It may be different where you live or work, but call 911, and if you can, tell the 911 operator that you're going to be applying a tourniquet because they're going to relay that information to us and the ambulance and the fire department, whoever's coming. That A, gives us an idea that this is serious, but B, it also, establishes a timeline because the hospitals really like to know how long a tourniquet has been on. And when we look at the tourniquets, you'll see there's actually a piece of it where you can write down the time, right? As if anybody's going to be able to do that under duress. But if you tell us on the phone, we'll be able to timestamp that in the computer, and then eventually the emergency room will be able to know. They have like a golden 3 hours with these things. They really want them to be on for less than 90 minutes, but it's about 3 hours before the tourniquet starts causing tissue necrosis, which is death of tissue. For the bleeding, open or remove the clothing so that you can see the wound. If it's bad enough that it's going to be a tourniquet situation, you're going to see the blood. It's going to pull up and it's going to be all over the place. But you want to expose the wound if you can. Life-threatening blood might be spurting. It won't stop. It might be on the ground. Clothing is soaked. Bandages are soaked. Maybe somebody put their own bandage on. You'll know if it's life-threatening blood. An amputation. Or loss of consciousness or an altered mental status. Your body is designed to go into shock when it encounters trauma. So what the body has evolved over the millennia to do is shunt the blood to the brain and the heart away from everything else. That's why your extremities will be cool and pale, maybe sweaty. Your body is doing what it's designed to do, and it's sending all the blood here and here. But then eventually it stops going to the brain and concentrates on the heart, and you get a little wacky. You might be altered mental status. That's another sign of hypovolemia, which means you're losing blood volume. There's the picture that the guy walked out on. Okay, you're not going to tourniquet a shoulder. We'll talk about how to put quick clot gauze in that. That I think is an arm there. That's an avulsion injury. That was it. That's the worst. There's an ankle. Right, these pictures are all taken from actual people. That's an ankle, and that's the splint that the people use to try to immobilize it. Arm and leg wounds are some of the most frequent injuries that we encounter, and they're some of the most preventable deaths because you can tourniquet that. With that, anybody bothered by that, or can I go back to it? With that, we would tourniquet above it and keep the blood from going out of the wound. Direct pressure, tourniquet, and then pack it. Junctional wounds, like in the torso, we're not going to be able to tourniquet these areas, but we can possibly pack them with the hemostatic gauze, the quick clot. Hemostatic just means stop blood. It's a fancy word for stopping blood. Hemostatic gauze, the trade name is often quick clot. Direct pressure and wound packing. This stuff was originally made from seashells.
But seashell.
Exactly, it's a quick clot. And that, whatever chemical they added in with the silica in the seashells reacts with the hemoglobin and binds together and causes the clot. Now it's completely man-made stuff. Chest and abdominal injuries, front, back, or side, we're not going to tourniquet them, but you may be able to pack them with the hemostatic gauze. That there doesn't look like a bad injury, doesn't look like a lot of bleeding, but that could be fatal. That's a couple of different small caliber bullet wounds, I think in somebody's back, right? Small calibers go in there and bounce around and do a lot of damage. So you may see that and think that the person's really not in bad shape, but they probably are. Again, this is something where we're going to try to cause the bleeding to stop by packing it, but it's not gonna be a tourniquet, because you can't tourniquet somebody's chest. We need to give EMS as much information over the phone as we can, and do what we can with a quick clot type thing, knowing that it's really only gonna be resolved with surgery. So for compression, again, first ensure your own safety, look for life-threatening bleeding, and then ask yourself if there's a trauma or first aid kit available. If there isn't, use any clean cloth or gauze to apply direct pressure, and make sure you call for help. You can use your hand or fingers, use 2 hands if you need to. Effective most of the time for external bleeding, right? They say that. And direct pressure really does a lot because it compresses the little blood vessels and makes them stop bleeding. Still call for help. It doesn't matter if it looks like they're okay, call for help. Let EMS make the decision. Use direct pressure even if it's a really serious arterial bleed. You'll know arterial bleed because the person's pulse will be coming out of their body, right? You won't be able to miss it. Bleeding control requires very firm, continuous pressure until relieved by medical responders. Frequently what we will do is we will not even take off your bandage because there might be a clot under there. We'll just keep putting more bandages over it and tourniquet it or wrap it. Again, that video with the 2 ladies in it shows that the American College of Surgeons and all of these organizations really want to incentivize non-medical people to render aid because you're covered by the law. Anybody can be sued for anything, but you're not necessarily going to be found liable if you're acting in good faith in the scope of your employment, in the scope of your training. So you don't want to tourniquet somebody's neck, right? I'm telling you now, that's not going to be covered. You put a tourniquet around somebody's neck, you're going to have a problem.
Ladies, your husband's not good.
But, you know, if you've ever seen MacGyver, you can use anything for anything, right? You can use anything for a tourniquet. If you need to use a belt, if you need to use shoelaces, if you don't have a store-bought tourniquet and you're familiar with and feel comfortable trying to use one, that girl I think in the video was saved with like the sleeve of a jacket or something. Don't put it around somebody's neck. That's not going to work. But use your common sense, and if you see an extremity that's bleeding and you think it needs a tourniquet, apply one. To be effective, the pressure has to be applied quickly, right? Just the less blood you lose, the better. Put the person on a firm surface if you can, and don't release pressure to check the wound. They're going to be in pain if it's a very bad wound, and your direct pressure will cause them pain, and they'll be complaining. Don't take the direct pressure off, no matter what they say. Use any clean cloth to cover the wound. If the wound is large and deep, try to stuff it with that cloth. Again, it doesn't have to be sterile. I wouldn't use a rag that a painter was just painting with, but it doesn't have to be sterile. Apply continuous pressure with both hands directly on top of the bleeding wound. Push down as hard as you can. Hold it until we arrive. No matter how much pain there is, no matter how much they ask you to let up, don't let up. Same rubric here, if you do have a first aid kit available, figure out where the wound is, whether it's an arm or a leg, and whether or not you have a tourniquet available. They're very easy to buy. You can get them on Amazon for anywhere between $10 to $30. These blue ones are trainers, which we're going to hand out in a few minutes. We need them back though, otherwise I'll get in trouble. Places like colleges and schools and industrial buildings and office buildings are very slowly starting to buy these stop the bleed kits, which we'll talk about at the end. They're going to be everywhere, just like AEDs, and I think there's actually legislation pending to make them as ubiquitous as AEDs. If there's a tourniquet, apply above the bleeding site. So wherever the injury is, put the tourniquet above it and closer to the heart. The rule of thumb is 2 fingers for it, but just common sense. You don't have to measure. Officer Grosjean very frequently mentions in his trainings, and so do we, when you're under stress, you lose all your fine motor skills and you lose your mind a little bit. That's why it's hard to swipe right to call, unlock your phone to call 911. You're going to be stressed and anxious and full of adrenaline. You might forget some of these things. You just kind of have to try to compose yourself and remember that you can't help if you can't control yourself. So when I say 2 fingers above, it doesn't matter if it's 3 fingers above. Whatever you can get yourself to do. Tighten until the bleeding stops. That's what it would look like applied. A tourniquet is a device that stops the flow of blood. If applied correctly, the tourniquet will stop the blood flow out of the extremity, out of the wound. Limiting the blood loss could potentially keep the person from going into shock and it could potentially keep them from dying. So if Officer Timm opens that up, you'll see it comes packed up like this. And then these are what are called combat application tourniquets. They're, like I said, $10 to $30 on Amazon. They're actually meant to be used one-handed. That's why the military uses them. Same thing with police officers. We carry them mostly on our gun belts, mostly for ourselves in case we get hurt. But we also carry extras in case somebody else gets hurt. We can't help if we're hurt, if we're unconscious because of blood loss. We carry them for ourselves, we also carry them for other people, but they're meant so that we can apply them to ourselves. Apply it immediately. If you see life-threatening bleeding, God bless you, in an arm or leg. Remember, life-threatening bleeding is uncontrolled bleeding. It's not a paper cut, it's not a laceration, it's not something that direct pressure can control. Life-threatening bleeding is uncontrolled bleeding. And at that point, the tourniquet is your only option. You can put the tourniquet over clothing if you have to, about 2 or 3 inches or 2 or 3 fingers above the wound. Do not apply a tourniquet directly over the knee or elbow joints. The bones of the joint will prevent the tourniquet from compressing the artery. Anatomically speaking, it won't work.
Can I just ask?
Sure.
In that case, you could go up higher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't put it over the wall.
Higher.
You know, like when I say 2 fingers, if it's right here or right, you know,
Right.
if 2 fingers is the joint, put it up. Do not apply directly over a pocket that contains bulky items. You know, I don't know who carries things in there. Maybe us.
Walls right here.
Again, it comes down to common sense.
Tourniquet can work.
Some help is better than no help. Do not apply directly over a pocket that contains bulky items. Anything in a pocket that is underneath the tourniquet will interfere with the function of the tourniquet. And then you're going to tighten the tourniquet until the bleeding stops. You'll notice the bleeding stopping. And in fact, if you put it on yourself as a practice thing, which we're told to tell you not to during the class, but if you do, you might notice that if you feel your radial pulse and you put it on your arm, if you tighten it long enough, the pulse will stop. It's not going to hurt you. But that's how, if that was bleeding, the bleeding would stop. Anatomically speaking, this cinches the blood vessels. These are the various different kinds. The military, you know, keep in mind, we've been at war in 2 theaters for 17 or 18 years. This is one of the reasons why they've really gotten tourniquets out, because they found that something like 45% of people died in World War II and Vietnam where they could have used a tourniquet, and now it's only like 17% in modern times in the 2 wars we're fighting, because they use these a lot. These are the ones that we carry, these combat application techniques. Tourniquet, they change, some of them are more metal than others. The ones that have the metal, they have a thing called a triangle, which is, it's sturdy, but it's hard to actually twist. So most people go with these cat tourniquets for our purposes. You can, that's the one we're going to train on today, but you can watch YouTube videos about all the different types of tourniquets. It's the military's preferred tourniquet because it's easy to use and can be rapidly applied, and you can do it yourself. That's what's really important. What do you call this? This rod thing here, it's called the windlass. I don't know where they came up with
The windlass rod.
This is the windlass. When you tighten it enough, when you wrap this all the way around, you just keep twisting and twisting and twisting, and then eventually you tuck it into this plastic buckle, and that holds it in place. And like I said, if you can, it'll say it later on, they love you to write the time you put it on. That's good for the doctors, because this won't come off until they're the surgical suite. They'd love to know how long it's on there. I don't expect that anybody will ever be able to think about putting time on it, because you lose all your fine motor skills, and if you've never been in this situation before, you lose your mind a little bit. We had an accident in Floral Park where a man was walking to pick up his paycheck, and the motorcyclist decided to do a wheelie and ran him over and cut his arm off in mid-humorous. The cops, you know, you see that, you're like, oh my God, this is, like, we lose our minds too. We see exciting things every day. That man did perish, and the other driving off to jail. But
We didn't have tourniquets.
we also didn't have tourniquets. But even people who see emergencies every day, we have to deliberately compose ourselves when we're put in situations that we don't see all. So application of the tourniquet, you're going to insert the wounded extremity, whether it's your arm or leg, through the combat application tourniquet. Just like Vanna White over here is showing. It could be your leg, it could be your arm, not your neck. Pull the self-adhering band tight and securely fasten it with the Velcro, just as he's doing right there. And then he'll show you about the in-flight moving. Be sure to remove all the slack. Adhere the band around the extremity. Do not adhere past the clip. Right? You can see the buckle there, or the clip stops. Twist the windlass rod until the bleeding stops. If he were bleeding somewhere down here, that bleeding would come to a halt. Right? Because what he's doing anatomically is cinching all the blood vessels. He's compressing the blood vessels in the arm so the blood won't get past the tourniquet if it's applied correctly. Then you're going to lock the windlass rod inside the clip or the buckle, and bleeding should stop. Right now, that was question?
Does it stop almost instantly?
You know, it really depends, but it'll stop pretty quickly. I can't say instantly because, first of all, like I said, he's doing this and it looks easy. If he was bleeding, he'd be like this, he'd be freaking out, or if he was putting on somebody he loves, or hearing gunshots. So it's not going to go on that easy in the real thing because you're going to be worried, upset, and anxious. But it'll stop pretty quick.
Question. If you don't have a tourniquet, okay, so you can use a belt, a scarf, with a belt, you've seen them on TV do what they do. How tight do you make it?
Same thing, tight until the
But you're
bleeding
not
stops.
twisting it.
No, so
You're just pulling.
you might have to hold it, right, until an ambulance comes. So if you're using some kind of
Other device.
jerry-rigged device, yeah, you might have to hold it in place because you're not going to have the windows to buckle in.
Okay.
Adhere the remaining self-adhering band over the rod through the windlass clip and continue around the extremity as far as it will go. He went a little ahead of us. Secure the rod and the band with the windlass strap. Grasp the strap, pull it tight, and adhere to the opposite hook. Again, you're going to tuck that in. You don't have to remember step by step. You're going to twist until it stops bleeding, and then you're going to figure out a way to get that windlass into the buckle and make it stay in place. Note the time. If you have a marker, you can write, the patient is now ready to transport. That's great, right? But who carries a Sharpie? A ballpoint pen won't work. So if you can, when we get there, say I put it on 5 minutes ago. Or honestly, in Floral Park, we're there before you get on the phone with 911, because we get there quick. So I put it on a minute ago. Whatever it is, let us backtrack the time if you can't remember.
You can take a screenshot on your phone.
You can do that.
You can remember.
You're not going to be able to, though. I promise.
No, probably not in this circumstance.
Yeah.
That's something that you could do.
We've heard people using a ballpoint pen and writing in time on someone's forehead.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever you can do to note the time. And if you, again, like Sarge said, I put it on 5 minutes ago. We do have the luxury of living in a county that has a lot of hospitals and a lot of trauma hospitals very close. You know, if you were out in the suburbs of Idaho, it might be a little different.
I work in a school, most of us can track time on our cameras now as well, if you're fortunate enough to be able to look at the event.
Some key points. Using one of the recommended tourniquets is a safe procedure. Again, this is recommended. It's considered first aid as a legal premise. It's not practicing medicine without a license. Like, for those of you who are familiar with Narcan, we train people in that too. That's a drug. Usually you have to have a prescription. Legislation has made that first aid. It's everywhere because they want these things out there to save lives. Improviser homemade tourniquets like a belt are much less effective than commercially available tourniquets such as these, and they're difficult to apply and stay put without practice, but that doesn't mean they can't work. If the bleeding is not stopped with one tourniquet that's on as tight as you can get it, you may have to put a second one. There's 2 there. There's 2 on that arm. Again, almost all of us have one on our person and 2 or 3 in the car. No amputations have been caused by a tourniquet when left in place for fewer than 2 hours, but it's best to get a patient to a trauma center as soon as possible. That just makes sense. Better to risk damage to the arm or leg than to have the victim bleed to death, and that's why it's covered by the Good Samaritan Act. Training or practice tourniquets should not be used during a real patient incident. I don't know why, because this will work, and these are training tourniquets. Repetitive use during training exercise, I guess that's the answer to it, may cause the tourniquets to fail, maybe the Velcro. These are brand new, we've only had it for 2 days. So that's the reason why, don't use these, but I recommend you just buy your own. In fact, when we taught the 260 teachers in our school district, half of them were on the phone the whole time, and I'm thinking, oh wow, they were buying. They all came up afterwards and said that they were on Amazon buying. So I was actually pretty flat.
$10 to $20 is about the going rate.
Yeah.
For this tourniquet on Amazon.
Tourniquets hurt when they're applied effectively. They hurt a lot. The victim is going to yell. The victims, don't forget, even if you if you just cause yourself to get pins and needles for long enough, that'll hurt. Now this is like pins and needles on steroids. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It does not mean it's on incorrectly, and it does not mean you should take it off. Do not take your tourniquet off once it's applied. That's for the doctors and sometimes the paramedics, depending on how they're trained. In Nassau County, paramedics can give medication for pain also in the ambulance. Some common mistakes. One is not using it or waiting too long when there's a life-threatening bleed. So try to avoid that. Excuse me. Not making it tight enough, not using a second tourniquet if the bleeding doesn't stop. Or loosening it to check on the wound. You don't want to do that because you may have allowed a clot to form. Now you're loosening it, you're jostling the clot, and that's going to cause a problem. Don't ever loosen it, don't ever remove it. Around here, the paramedics are probably not going to remove it because they're trained to keep it on. The Nassau Regional Medical Council, or whatever, Nassau REMAC, their protocol is for the ALS ambulances to keep the tourniquets on and leave it for the physicians in the trauma. Any questions about tourniquets? We can go into quick plot. Yeah. So, we can practice for a couple minutes, or I can keep going, you can practice the end. What would you guys rather do? Probably about 10 minutes left, probably. No? Okay. So, compression to stop the bleeding. We've gotten through the rubric here. Where is the wound, arm or leg? Is a tourniquet available? If there's no tourniquet, use the hemostatic gauze, bleeding control gauze. This is what it looks like if you buy it. It's vacuum packed. This is about $30. That's why we don't open these. We have trainer gauze, which doesn't have the chemical in it that actually reacts with the blood. We carry these in our little first aid kits in the police car. They're all in here along with a different, similar but different type of tourniquet. Where's the,
They do have a shelf life.
yeah, but everything is a shelf life, including they do have a shelf life. Like this one is good until 9/28 of 2002. Does that mean it's not going to work on 9/30 of 2022? It'll work. I may have said 2002. 2022. You know, it's vacuum packed. 2002. I'm having a bad day. 2022. That doesn't, it's vacuum packed. It's going to work, but they have to put a shelf life on it. If it's the neck or shoulder or groin, it's not a tourniquet situation. You're really only going to use some type of hemostatic gauze and pack the wound. So quick clot is the trade name here, or combat gauze. There's another thing called Celox or Celox Rapid, Chitoflex, Chitogauze. If you put in quick clot in Amazon, all of these things will come up. Buy it by price point if you want to buy it. You know what, it's great, like I drive to Florida twice a year. I have these things in my car because you never know, God forbid. Not necessarily that I'm going to stop and be a good Samaritan, but what if it's my kids in the backseat? I carry the stuff in my car. You might want to have it in your house. Maybe your husband or wife likes to putter around the house with power tools. Maybe it's not a good idea to have it. I don't know how to use tools. The only thing I know how to use is a gun. So my wife doesn't have to worry about me even hanging a shelf. He's very handy. I can barely hang a picture on the wall. Wound packing. Open the clothing around the wound. If possible, remove excess blood that's pooled from the wound while preserving any clots. Again, they have to say this, but it's almost ridiculous because no matter what, whether it's your stranger or somebody you love, you're not going to be looking for clots and finding excess clot. You're going to pack, and we'll show you how to do that on here. Locate the source of the most active bleeding. Believe it or not, even like an elderly person that's a little bit more frail, they can die from a long bone fracture. If whether it's their humerus or their radius and ulnar, their tibia, fibula, if those things crack and become an open fracture, they can bleed to death from those fractures if they have really small brittle bones. So a tourniquet, while it won't necessarily help the bone bleed, it will help the blood vessels that are around the bone that are bleeding. Pack the wound with the hemostatic dressing or gauze. Like we also just bring regular gauze when we do the training just so you get the feel of packing the wound. You know, while I'm talking, because you can pull a little bit into the leg.
Sure.
clean cloth. This is a situation where, again, it doesn't have to be sterile, but you don't want to put a painter's cloth or some other really filthy cloth in there. Try to use the cleanest thing you can. You'll see the fake blood in a second, but you could actually bring it back. Stuff right into the wound and directly into the bleeding site. So this is what you're doing. The right way to do it is to stuff your fingers into the wound. Pack it in there as much as you can. I know it sounds disgusting, but you know what? If it's a question of your loved one dying, it's the right thing to do. Pack, pack, pack. You'll see in a couple seconds if you want to. Not just put it on top. That's the wrong way to do it. That's the right way to do it. Quickly apply and hold pressure directly on the packed wound until relieved by medical responders. If initial packing and direct pressure fail to stop the bleeding, pack a second gauze. Again, it's not going to get lost in there. That blue line shows up on an x-ray, and I've seen the x-rays. It's pretty cool to see all these things shoved into a wound. Questions about that?
If you don't have the quick clot, you can use regular.
If you have to, yeah. Again, this is a lot of information in a short period of time because conceptually, it's, you're saying it's firemen. When firemen can do it, anybody can. Right? That's a joke. But, and on fire. And on camera. It's a joke. They say the same thing about us. So, it's first aid. It's literally considered first aid. The surgeons want you to do this. The law wants you to do this. It's first aid. The only thing worse than somebody dying is somebody that shouldn't have died dying. So we'll practice on that also. But before we do that, just a couple of other things. In all but the extremely young child, the same tourniquet and the same packing technique can be used. It'll be a little bit different for an infant. For the infant, a very small child, the tourniquet's going to be too big. Direct pressure on the wound, as described previously, will work in almost all cases. Because anatomically, they have these tiny little blood vessels. Less blood is going to come out of them. For large, deep wounds, wound packing can be performed in children just as in adults using the same technique as that picture I just showed you. After arrival, if you have any blood on you, wash yourself thoroughly with soap and water and notify medical responders that you might have been exposed. Right? If it's a stranger, we'll probably record that in police paperwork that you were exposed. If it's your own loved one, it's probably not something you're going to worry about. A quick summary, ABCs of bleeding. First, ensure your own safety. Right? We were taught in AMT school and EMT school, make sure the scene is safe. Same thing goes for you. Call 911 or however you would notify people for help. And where we work, we have a regular 7-digit landline as well as 911. Some of the people who have lived in our village forever just call our landline. Bleeding, find the bleeding injury, compress, apply direct pressure by covering the wound with a clean cloth and applying pressure directly over it with both hands, or using a tourniquet, or packing or filling the wound with the gauze or clean cloth. When we use the regular gauze, we're just going to assume, for the purposes of this, that it's quick clot or hemostatic agent because it's the same technique. These are some of the agencies and organizations that advocate for Stop the Bleed. This bleedingcontrol.org website has videos on it. It'll link you to YouTube if you want to look at it and see more information about it. It also has some documents you can read to familiarize yourself.
Hello, I'm Devin McCordy. Trauma is a leading cause of death in the United States, and many trauma victims bleed to death before even reaching the hospital. A new initiative called Stop the Bleed is focused on empowering you, the public, to recognize life-threatening bleeding and intervene at the right time to give victims a chance at life. Gillette Stadium is the first professional sports stadium that has trained their personnel and placed easily accessible bleeding control kits throughout the stadium. To learn more, go to bleedingcontrol.org or download the Gillette Stadium app so you can too stop the bleed.
The only thing more tragic than a death is a death that could have been prevented. These are what people buy. So this is a personal kit, right? It's actually rather small. That's what's inside of it. We've got, this is a compression bandage used by the Israeli military. That's the tourniquet. It comes with a Sharpie, some quick clot, and some nitrile gloves, which are a little more expensive, but that's what we carry because things like fentanyl and carfentanil don't go through the nitrile. They do go through latex, so we try not to touch anybody unless we have the purple gloves. That's what it looks like on the wall. Those are about $600. A lot of schools and office buildings and industrial parks buy them, and it has multiple kits inside of it. And then lastly, you can also download an app for free, I think, on both types of phones, where it says, are you in an emergency? You click yes or no, and then it guides you through what to do. There's even some videos for the non-emergency situations, but if you click yes, it'll tell you to call for help, and then it'll prompt you with some pictures and some guidance about how to apply it. That's not going to help you with an emergency, I have to tell you, because you're not even going to put in your 4-digit code in an emergency. It's just, you're not. It's just, you lose all of your fine motor skills when you're nervous and worked up. So, I really want you to know that this is first aid. You can always be sued. Anybody can sue anybody. But if it's a question of helping somebody or letting them die, the legal preference is to help them because it's considered first aid, just like if you were doing CPR, putting an AED on somebody. That's important to know. And if it's a stranger, it's important that you cover up. Use gloves, use whatever you have handy. If it's somebody in your living room that you know and love, that's not necessarily a consideration. It could be, but not necessarily. But just know that it's better to help somebody than not to help them if you don't have. So, any questions on?
What if there's a head bleed, like cartilage, something like that?
Typically, you're not going to pack a lot because there's not a lot of depth there.
Just apply pressure.
You're going to apply pressure, and if you're good at it, like if it were me, I would put some gauze around them and wrap them up like a mummy. That's what the ambulance is going to do. But direct pressure is the best thing you can do right off the bat. bleedingcontrol.org is a good website. So what we can do is we can practice with the stuff. If you get a chance, fill out this roster and I can email you, make sure I can read your email. I can email you a certificate from the American College of Surgeons that says you were here. And then the last thing is, you have to promise me if you ever use one of these things, you've got to call 911. Don't just assume that you've fixed the problem, because if you've used a tourniquet, it's not going to last. Eventually, they'll start bleeding out. Eventually, that clot will go someplace it shouldn't go, or it will break up, or that shock will just go too far down the spectrum of shock disorder, and the person will die. You've got to call 911.